Hey everybody, before we get started with Jordan Young, the author of Spike Jonze' Off the Record, The Man Who Murdered Music, which is a great book. The most recent version is coming out, and it's got all kinds of updated information, new stuff about Spike Jonze. You're going to love it. It's a great conversation, a great book. I wanted to bring your attention to my best friend Dan has a cat named Skeeter who has FIP, which is a very upsetting disease for your cat to have. And he's trying to raise money for the experimental drugs for it that are quite expensive. So if you go to bit.ly/save Skeeter, that's bit.ly/SAVESKEETER, you can help raise money for them to pay for their cat's medicine to keep her alive. So it would really mean a great deal to me if you did that. So please check that out, bit.ly/save Skeeter. And now listen to my interview with Jordan Young. I'm Jason Klom, and this is Comedy on Vinyl. The year is 1957. The album Dinner Music for People Who Aren't Very Hungry. The artist Spike Jonze. My guest this week is Jordan Young. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jason.
I'm excited to speak with you. As listeners will know, we recently spoke with Spike Jonze Jr. To get the sort of personal, in-depth perspective and the perspective of somebody who had to take over for his own ailing father. Just such an interesting and sad but fascinating story. But also, since you have been chronicling Spike's life for how long now?
Let's see, the first edition came out in 1984.
Wow, okay. So not very long. You're not very concerned with it. Holy cow. And the fourth edition is the most recent edition, correct?
Yes.
Wow. And what sort of stuff? Well, let's start there. First of all, start with the name of the book, and then I'd really like to know, like, what has changed over the course of the years that really is like a real revelation where you have to update the book.
Spike Jonze, Off the Record, The Man Who Murdered Music. And boy, a lot has changed over the years. After I did when I started in the early 90s to go to work on the second edition, I realized I hadn't told the whole story. There were still a lot of people out there I hadn't interviewed, including people in the sort of his competitors, the Schnickel Fritzers and the Corn Cobblers and the Hoosier Hotshots. And some of these guys were still around. So I ran around talking to as many of them as I could find. And that was all, but there were other people too, Stan Freeberg and Bill Dana and other people like that, associates, or certainly people that have something to say about him. And then I guess it was the third edition, I got hold of Doodles Weaver's son, Win. Had these. I already knew about them, but he didn't want to let them go initially. He didn't want to show them to anybody, and he didn't want to look at them himself. It was too intimidating for him. But he had a box of Doodles diaries. Doodles had started keeping a diary in 1925 when he was 12 years old.
Oh wow!
And in fact, that's how I determined Doodles' actual birth date. My math is. I think we determined that I determined that he was born in 1913. That's not what it says on his death certificate or in any of the bits. In fact, Wynn went down at my suggestion. Wynn went to the Hall of Records to pick up the birth certificate, and they couldn't. They were happy to take us $25, but they couldn't find the birth certificate.
Wow!
But in Doodle's 1925 diary, he says, I'm paraphrasing here, hooray, I'm 12 years old today. And in the 1926 diary, it's, yippee, I'm 13 today. So there's no question that, his birth date was 1913. And I think it's correct in this edition for the first time. But the diaries themselves are just a revelation. He's, really extensive notes and commentaries on the Spike Jonze years, but then 20 years later, he's obsessively reading and rereading the diaries and making notes in the margins.
Wow.
In the margins, I was drunk here. I mean, he confesses. I mean, it took him 20 years to face the truth, but he finally, in the 70s, as he's rereading these notes in the diaries from 20 and 25 years earlier, he's owning up to the fact that he was, frequently drunk, and Spike, in fact, fired him for being drunk. And
Wow.
but there's nothing like that in the original, diary entries.
Holy cow. That's amazing. I would love to know now then what got you, where did you first hear of Spike Jonze, and how long before you were a fan, and then what kept you continuing to be obsessed with him?
Yeah, I was great question, Jason. I was about 13. We just moved into a new house in North Orange County.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to start high school, so one of my best friends, and his friend, who was old enough to drive, were coming over frequently that summer to use the pool, hang out and use the pool and stuff. And it might have been the first time they came over that summer. They pulled up in my driveway with Der Fuhrer's face blaring out of their car, probably an 8-track tape in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know. I mean, how can you hear that and not just go slightly nuts? In fact, one of my cousins told me just recently that he had played it for his 15-year-old grandson, and the kid went crazy over it. He just can't get enough of it. So
I love it.
Anyway, that started it. I started, this is long before anybody thought of eBay or anything like that. So I'm running down to the neighborhood thrift stores and buying 78s and whatever I can get my hands on. And eventually I, find the Best of Spike Jonze LP and things like that. But that's some years in the future even. And I met Doodles in 1976 at a banquet.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was standing in line in front of me when I initially, so I sort of maneuvered things to get at his table, and there's only like 4 or 5 of us at the table, and I wanted to hear about working with Spike, but he kept me laughing so hard I never got to ask him anything. Entertaining us all night at the table by doing ridiculous things. And the following year, I interviewed Mickey Katz for the LA Times. Mickey was Joel Grey's father.
Yeah.
Worked with Spike for a while, and then went off and had his own band doing these English
Mm-hmm.
parodies, which are really great. And I got to know Mickey quite well. And then I also met, around that time, I met Eddie Brandt, who was one of Spike's writers. He had a memorabilia shop up in North Hollywood. And you'd go hang out there and he'd tell you stories and things. And after I had met the 3 of them, I got to thinking I should do an article for the Times. And then I thought, no, this is really a book. And it wasn't until my then wife's cousin called. I had done a piece on the 40th anniversary of Der Fuhrer's face for the LA Times. And my then wife's cousin saw it and called and said, hey, there's a used furniture store out here in Culver City, out in the West LA area, that has a box of Spike Jonze sheet music. But when I went out there, instead, what I found was in the guy's back office, he had 6 huge file boxes of not only sheet music, but the original arrangements, the remnants, I should say, of the music library arrangements used by the band. And best of all, I guess, office correspondence. Spike saved everything, no carbons of, from the early 50s on, I think, carbons of
my God.
Correspondence, memos, and everything. And so I thought, well, now I have to do the book. I don't have a choice now.
Yeah. Yeah, that stuff thrown in your lap. I mean, what else are you supposed to do?
Wow. Just serendipity. It just fell in my lap. What are you going to do?
It's one of the things I talked with Spike Jr. about was this very weird phenomenon that happens with certain people. He did not have a central archive. He didn't hire an archivist, so his stuff got spread out among the fans. And so now trying to come up with a succinct in one place archive doesn't really happen, but it's fortunate that at least that big of a chunk is in the hands of someone like you who's going to use it and expose people to what's in there, which is the kind of thing I appreciate.
I don't know to what extent he told you the story, but everything was basically scattered to the winds.
Yeah.
There was a warehouse. He had a warehouse full of stuff. And his then manager, Peter James, who had been one of his comedians, was told to take care of it.
Wow.
That's the phrase I heard. He was told to take care of it. And so he took care of it. He called the St. Vincent de Paul Society, whatever, and they came with the trucks.
Wow.
And a lot of it ended up in the St. Vincent de Paul thrift store in Los Angeles. And just, again, serendipity, a guy named Warren Dexter, who was a big Spike Jones fan, a huge fan, just happened to be there, apparently, when the trucks arrived, and managed to rescue an awful lot of this material. Warren has since passed away, but there are 3 or 4 of us, Spike's archivist, Ted Herring, and a guy named Randy Morris, an entertainer in Florida, and a fellow named Skip Craig, who Spike himself designated as #1 city slicker fan. A couple of other folks just had massive collections of stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, when I hear stuff like that, I'm always happy that, again, it's perfect. I'm glad that serendipity did occur in that case, that stuff got to be preserved, and who knows, one day maybe this stuff ends up in a museum, who knows, but at least it's saved from the ravages of time.
The instruments, all over the place. I mean, some of them end up in flea markets and that type of thing. Some of them ended up in antique shops. This fellow named Carl Mack, who's based in New Orleans, was able to purchase I guess Spike Jr. described them as his dad's Sunday best, these chrome cowbells.
Uh-huh.
And he was able to purchase them from a musician who had purchased them from Helen Greco.
Mm-hmm.
So he's I think it's the Kentucky Symphony Orchestra. I don't know if you can still find this performance online. It was only a few weeks ago. And the third time I think that they've done this, called Who Spiked the Symphony? Mm-hmm. But the Kentucky Symphony Orchestra, performing in Cincinnati, did this wonderful concert with Carl Mack at the Cowbells.
That's great. I love it. I also like when that stuff gets used. It adds a little extra purpose to it and meaning.
There've been a number of attempts to revive the Spike Jones sound over the years.
For sure. So it sounds like Spike stuck with you. It just seemed like his music must have just been a part of your existence. If by the time you're getting to writing stuff, professionally, that this is the stuff you're thinking about in the back of your head.
Yeah, I would, back in high school, I would take these 78s over to the campus music station, and try to get them to play them. I think they did once or twice, but, some antidote for the, daily renditions of Barbara Ann and all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Spike himself. I mean, he had a lot of trouble with, when this kind of stuff started in the 50s. Stan Freberg, I think, was more successful at satirizing rock and roll, but it's not even rock. I mean, it's just this horrid the pop music. So there was I can't quote it, but Spike himself made this comment, something to the effect that with all the advances in medical science and everything, I mean, why can't we cure things like Wake Up Little Susie? I would take these things into the campus record station in the high school, trying to, as an antidote to this kind of stuff. But I couldn't get them on the air very often, just once or twice. I know they played my '78 of Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Sheen once,
Mm-hmm.
the Paul Whiteman recording, and I think they played at least one or two Spikes. But
Let's talk for a moment about why you recommended dinner music for people who aren't very hungry. I'd like to know what stands out about it. Why give this one a listen?
yeah, it's my favorite by far of all of Spike's albums. I think it's a wonderfully inventive use of sound effects and everything. It's I think at that point in time, I mean, this is already pretty late in his career, right? Uh, just evidence that he was still coming up with all sorts of wonderfully crazy and inventive ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And the demonstration of the garbage disposal, and then the garbage disposal grinding up the violinist, and then things like that. Of course, the Black and Blue Daniel Waltz,
Yeah.
a makeover, if you will, of the Blue Danube that he'd done much earlier in his career. Just wonderfully crazy, and again, very inventive.
Have you, through his music, it sounds like, again, you were introduced to it by some friends. Have you made friends over the love of his music, and have you made any friends with people who worked with him?
Made a few enemies. I was fortunate to make friends with a number of people who work with Spike. Again, Mickey Katz,
Mm-hmm.
also Joe Siracusa, who is at 99 is the last surviving member of the City Slickers. Several other people who had worked with Spike were I became good friends with, and sadly they're all gone now except for Joe.
Sure. What is that relationship like when these people? I know my experience when I've approached some people about their work. Sometimes people are like, "Why is this the thing you've picked?" Other people are more than happy to talk about this thing because it was a very important or happy part of their lives. I'm curious, like, what the range of responses you got to wanting to hear more about the City Slickers.
Yeah, pretty much all over the place. I mean, a guy named Earl Bennett, who became a very good friend. I became very good friends with. He performed with Spike under the name Sir Frederick Gass.
Mm-hmm.
Comedy, material in the stage shows, and he's on a number of the recordings, like Riders in the Sky and Tennessee Waltz. I went to your wedding, and initially Earl just didn't want to talk. And I set up there's a group called Spurback, it's a old-time radio preservation organization in Los Angeles. I set up a panel with Joe Siracusa and Earl Bennett and two of Spike's writers, Eddie Brandt and Eddie Maxwell. And it's about 30 years ago. And a couple of days before the event, Earl decided he wasn't going to do it if I was going to be on the panel as the moderator, which was the intent. And so I was replaced at the last minute by Cleve Herman, who had been I guess, an LA disc jockey, and somebody, that everybody knew. And after the event, I went up and thanked Earl for participating. And he said, "You still want to do that interview?" Yeah. Come up to the house next week and we'll do it. Just a complete turnaround. Yeah, he either loved you or hated you.
Okay.
And unfortunately, in my case, it was both. I mean, first he hated me, and then he loved me. I was his best friend for 10 years, and then he found another reason to hate me again. But I mean, he was incredibly candid. Not everything that he had to say about Spike was was positive. I mean, but I mean, he was also quite good friends with Spike's daughter, Linda, and he had told her all of these things over the years, you know, and so he told me both the positive and the negative, and that's really what you want if you're going to write a book about somebody,
Yeah.
not just an article. Um, you know, you can't just write um, about all the good stuff. You can't. They don't sound like real people, do they? I mean,
Right.
if you try to erase all the blemishes and all, I mean, there is absolutely no one, including myself. I mean, none of us are saints. Uh, and there's absolutely no one that in history, whether you're talking about music history or anything else that you could write about. There's good and there's not so good. You know, you can't you simply can't write a book about somebody and erase all the blemishes and all the scars and everything.
Absolutely. I mean, this is one of those things in entertainment books, especially that walk a weird line. I used to collect, biographies and autobiographies, but those things were the exact opposite. They were carefully curated. They were not, they were probably dictated.
Most of them were dictated to ghostwriters.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, people have told me. I think more than one person made this comment that I admire Spike Jones all the more reading about all this other stuff. You've given it to us warts and all.
Yeah.
I admire him even more. Just knowing what really went on behind the scenes and everything.
Let's see. Sorry,
Well, let me just
no, yeah.
jump in on that though. I think behind the scenes, and most people don't realize this.
Mm-hmm.
I think very few people realize behind the scenes to me is where Spike demonstrated his real genius, because he was an absolute public relations and marketing wizard. And
Mm-hmm.
even though he had publicists, and he had managers, and he had people doing all these things, marketing and stuff. It was most of it was coming down from the top. He was the one masterminding the public relations campaigns and the marketing of the product and the tours and everything.
That's crazy.
It is.
Do you think that is, some people would say perfectionist, some people would say control freak. What do you think, why do you think he wanted that kind of control over it?
I think both those labels are accurate. He was a perfectionist, and but I think just smarter than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
He hired a lot of great talent, but and he was a tremendous talent scout too. I mean, he hired all the best musicians. He didn't typically hire comedians unless that was all they were. He was hiring you as a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the guys in the band he hired as musicians, and then he discovered that they had latent comedic abilities.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Could do sound effects, where they were songwriters, or they could stand on their head and play the ukulele or whatever it was.
The feeling I've gotten so much is that he was obviously a serious musician, for whatever that really means, but he was a musician at heart before anything. I'm curious, do you think the reason he continued on with musical comedy or comedy music at some point was just merely, this is how I'm making my money, this is how, or do you think there was anything in him that wanted to keep doing funny stuff at all?
There was, but at the same time, he wanted to. He also wanted to prove that he could do, big band music as well as anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But he tried it, and it didn't go over. I mean, people just wouldn't buy it.
Yeah.
he had a big Spike Jones Other Orchestra performing at the Trocadero in Los Angeles or Hollywood, Los Angeles area. Um, and people were walking out and saying, what is this? In the words of Mickey Katz, I just, what is this crap? If we want a symphony, we'll go to the Hollywood Bowl. We didn't come to hear, uh, they didn't come to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
They expected the comedy stuff, especially that was right at its peak too.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? Where maybe it's easier to go from in any art form, easier to go from quote unquote straight to comedy rather than the reverse, because once that expectation is set, you're kind of boned.
Yeah, it was very difficult for him to break away from it, and of course he recorded all sorts of things, and even toward the end, he's with the folk music craze, he's doing Spike Jones' new band, the Washington Square, and then the Hank Williams hits and all these other things, and they sound great, but um, you wouldn't guess that they were his,
Right. Sure. There's
But
no.
I think it's sad that the one of the I mean Liberty Records gave him the liberty to do whatever he wanted, but at the same time they were in the business of selling records, so they kept coming up with these ideas like that to sell records, And so one of his pet projects in those last few years was an album called Persuasive Concussion, and it didn't get finished.
Mm,
And if I sent you the Liberty version of Carmen,
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
The boy, it's so hard with somebody who it's very easy, I think, to discuss people in context who are always comedians, who are only comedians, who are exclusively or pretty much exclusively comedians, but somebody who clearly had to struggle with the comedy part of their career or struggle with the other part of their career that they wanted to happen. It's very rare. How do you think that sort of dichotomy informed the rest of his life, and has it informed your writing about it?
no, I think you have to recognize it was a struggle. This was a guy who wanted to be a jazz band drummer
Mm-hmm.
originally, and he's working as a sideman in various bands, and he's having some success. I mean, he was I guess Bing Crosby's favorite drummer. He's on over 100. He's playing the drums or the percussion on over 100 Bing Crosby records. So he, has really had some success. But where he started to get some recognition is when he put together a little group of guys, and they're doing this stuff on the side for fun, some novelty recordings and things, and they get a contract with RCA, and they're cutting sides, but nothing really happens until Jeff Shearer's face, and then suddenly overnight he's, this huge, this phenomenal success, doing these crazy records, and then he can't do anything else.
Yeah.
He's really, in that era especially. The same thing with actors. I mean, uh, they hit it playing one type of part. Most of them were typecast. They were locked into that type of part for the rest of their careers, whether they were leading men or women, or they were character actors,
Mm-hmm.
supporting players. They were, by and large, locked into that stereotype or that mold. And the same thing with Spike. It was very hard for him to break out of that. Um,
When you started writing about him first, how quickly did your perception of who he was change when you started interviewing people and researching him?
Boy, I think there were. I interviewed dozens of people for the first book, which was called Spike Jones and the City Slickers. But it was a while, I think, before I started to talk to people that wanted to show me that other side of him. Initially, I think they think what you want to hear about it. You want to hear the funny stories and things.
Mm-hmm.
And although I got to know Mickey Katz pretty well, and he told me some things, but it really wasn't until I started really digging deep and interviewing, just going after just about anybody I could find. I mean, there was a guy who had a music store. He had worked for Spike. He had played clarinet for Spike back in the 40s. And somebody said, maybe you should call this guy. And I called him up and he says, yeah, what I'd have to say, I don't think you want to hear. And it took me, I think, a while to persuade him that I did want to hear it. And, I'm not sure all of it was true.
Sure.
I did corroborate, the stories that I felt that there was something behind them. I did corroborate those with other people. I mean, it's a real advantage having, started all the way back then. I mean, that there were a great number of people still alive
Yeah.
who had worked with him. There were even a couple of guys who'd gone to high school with him. There was even one of his teachers I talked to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he graduated high school in 1929. So here it is, more than 50 years later, I was able to talk to one of his teachers. So
That's amazing. Have you yourself, I mean, are you musical at all?
no, I played piano when I was 7 or 8, but it only lasted about a year and a half. I just didn't want to practice. And then I tried picking up the guitar when I was about 18 and taking music lessons. But a friend of mine was able to, without being able to read music, was able to pick up a guitar and play anything that he'd watched, or play things that he had watched people play.
Yeah.
He'd watch you play it, and then he'd pick up the guitar and he'd play it. And that just did it for me. There was no justice in that, because he could play it better without being able to read music or study it or anything than I could.
Wow.
So
So was it the first book on Spike Jones, period?
no, it was Jason. It was there had been people who had attempted to write books on him. There had been at least a couple of attempts prior to that that hadn't just hadn't happened. There was a discography floating around, and Ted Herring, Spike's archivist, and I was able to use that and build on it. And but I mean, I mentioned Skip Craig earlier. Skip was a band boy for Spike, and had started collecting discographical information back in the 40s. And then when he met Ted Herring in the 60s, he turned it over to him. And Ted was corresponding with Spike and asking him questions and things. And when Spike played Disneyland in 1964, Ted had his opportunity to finally see the band in action, and he went up and he went up and to talk to Spike, I guess, during a break or after the show or something, and he started asking him questions, and Spike said, "There's a guy named Ted Herring you should talk to." He said, "I am Ted Herring."
I love it. I love it. He didn't even bother to introduce himself. That's amazing.
He was not, but
Too excited.
anyway, yeah. So this Spike is the best archivist, working on to this day, collecting information. I mean, if I have questions about things, I just go and ask Ted.
Go ask him. Okay. That's amazing.
Anything to do with that type of thing, I mean, there's discography, discographical questions. Absolutely. Ted is the go-to guy, but, and now I'm sorry, I've forgotten you asked me about it was the first book.
Yeah. I was just curious if I'm wondering why nobody else has succeeded before you, even in writing, something less detailed.
Yeah, it had been almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy that nobody had even tried, or that honestly that at some point somebody hadn't wrangled him into writing his own. 20 years into his own career, it wouldn't be unusual. I've seen him
Yeah,
happen.
that probably would never have happened. But
Yeah,
there were, like I say, a couple of people who had made an attempt, had made a start, had gone and interviewed a couple of people and then given up or whatever.
sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you feel? I mean, I don't know. Writing can take up a real personal part of your brain. Do you feel any connection to Spike as a result of all of this work, this many years worth of work writing about him?
I feel I've gotten to know him as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he, I certainly feel a much to a much greater extent than I did the first time. It's just having lived with the material for so long and having talked to so many people and who knew him, more than 100 people.
That I mean, that's I think the best thing that you can hope for too in writing something like this, because I mean, unless you discover somebody's an absolute monster, although I guess at that point you still also understand who they are deep down.
Yeah, I don't think I could write about somebody who was a monster.
Sure.
There would have to be uh, some aspect of him I really admired or something. I don't think I could do a book on Hitler or anything,
Sure. Sure.
or Jeffrey Dahmer or anything. You know,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the thing that always catches me up on true crime and things is how does anybody sit through? How do you survive even the research part? That I don't understand.
no, I couldn't do it. It has to be somebody I really admired. And the only other actual biography I've done is a book on an Irish stage and film actor named Jack McGowan.
Mm-hmm.
Who's a lot of people remember him from The Quiet Man, but he's in Dr. Zhivago, he's in Tom Jones, he's in The Exorcist. But his stage work is the most interesting thing because he was Samuel Beckett, who's I consider the most important playwright and the most influential of the 20th century. Um, he was McGowan was considered Beckett's foremost interpreter, and so I did an authorized biography of him and interviewed everybody from John Lennon to Roman Polanski to James Mason to it's just Peter O'Toole. He worked with a lot of people like that.
Wow. What's your goal in writing either of these? Is it just to give people is that discovery of somebody, is that part of it, or is that just a bonus? Is it just literally to tell people this the true story of who this person was?
I hope to. I hope that the book, number one is it's a resource for people and who are already familiar with Spike and just want to know more about him or about the work that he did. But I hope that it also inspires. It introduces people to him. It keeps him alive, keeps his work alive, and is there for people that to rediscover or rediscover him.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that just by default you are helping to keep alive all of it, which I think is great. I think people will probably then discover all of his work, and if you read something like this, I feel like you become sympathetic to somebody's quest to broaden their horizons, or at least show people another side of them. So I think it's interesting in doing what you do. You are keeping all of the work alive, whether it's the stuff that they're most famous for or less famous for, stuff that they wanted to become famous for. Have you, through your research, discovered anything that nobody else knew about, or only you and this archivist knew about, or just undiscovered recordings, anything like that?
Yeah, I discovered recordings that the archivist certainly knew about. I had the at some point I was given the opportunity to produce a CD, and so for a company, and I I told the I told the company's A&R man, I said, there's all this really great rare, this incredibly rare stuff that's just sitting there collecting dust in the archive, and he said, I know what rare one entertaining.
Yeah.
So I gave the most entertaining rarities I could find. But with Ted Herring's help, I was able to uh, stuff that CD with a lot of material that had never been issued before or had never been reissued. Or, um, but yeah, I certainly made other discoveries. The one I mentioned of the guy behind the scenes who's masterminding everything. I sort of compare Spike to the Wizard of Oz, the
Hmm.
little behind the curtain that's nobody's paying attention to. But I also, in writing about him, I also discovered, other artists who were active. There's a guy named Gerard Hoffnung, who was a British humorist who died tragically young, but
Hmm.
he did a couple or three albums in the 50s of uh, it's just absolutely insane stuff. I ran
Yeah.
across somewhere, I ran across in my research a quote from, I guess it was Time Magazine or something, describing him as um, the sophisticated Spike Jones, or that's not quite the
Sure.
classical, the classical Spike Jones, or the sophisticated version of Spike or something like that. And I
Hmm.
discovered that this guy had just uh, by concentrating on classical music, which Spike did a lot of great parodies of classical music in the 40s. By the 50s, he'd except for the Black and Blue Danube Waltz and a couple of other things, he'd gone on to other things. But here was Hoffner doing these symphony concerts with overture for vacuum cleaners and all sorts of wild stuff. He did two or three of these huge symphonic concerts in London, and put out these LPs. And he was also a cartoonist.
Yeah.
Wonderful little cartoon books of musicians and orchestras and stuff. Just these crazy cartoons that he did. I discovered people like that,
Yeah.
and really the whole. Uh, I think I was only vaguely aware of some of these people, like the Hoosier Hotshots, did these wonderful recordings in the 30s, the same type of thing that Spike was doing, but on a smaller scale.
Hmm.
I just I interviewed the Gabe Ward, the clarinet player with the Hoosier Hotshots, just 2 weeks before he died.
Hmm.
We suddenly got the idea that I should find this guy and talk to him. And a couple of members of the Corn Cobblers, was another group. Yeah, I love all that stuff, all these uh, comedy novelty recordings. So
Yeah.
I I became familiar with many artists and groups that I had never heard of in researching Spike's work.
It's a nice kind of context to have, especially if it's stuff that didn't get the exposure. I'm assuming they were very appreciative to speak about that part of their lives.
Yeah, they certainly, nobody had ever called most of them before to ask them about this stuff,
Yeah.
and they were. I was looking them up in the musicians union directory.
Hmm.
I was, musicians never uh, quit the union.
Right.
Members for life. Why? Because of the death benefits, and which means that you can get hold of the. And just a little tip for any of you doing musical research, about, especially on any bands from the past. You often find the surviving members of these bands in the musicians union directories. Um, that's how I got hold of a lot of these guys. I have to say, I was tipped off by uh, by somebody who did a book on Spike. Around the same time, I was working on a book that was it was another book that was being done.
Hmm. That's, I mean, I will honestly tell you that is a good tip for me, considering this one person that I've been researching for a long time is a comedian, but also a musician, and knew a ton of musicians. So I'm gonna take that bit of advice to heart, because I can use it.
The guy whose idea that was, his name was Jack Myrtle, and he wrote a book on Spike called "Thank You, Music Lovers," which is a biodiscography.
Oh, that's
But
great.
Myrtle is a musician himself, and so he knew that. Nobody had to, had to tell him. That was how you get hold of these people.
Yeah.
I took that idea and I ran with it. And
Yeah, of course.
found even I'm in New York, hanging out with a musician, and they had to go to the union, and so I went with them, and I picked up a copy of the directory, and I found people in that directory that had been members of either Spike's band or of some of these other bands like the that I mentioned.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That stuff is a gold mine. And it's harder. Obviously, the person that I've been researching is not as high profile, so it's a lot harder to find the people who worked with him. But I also appreciate that there's this thing about famous people, well-known people, where people sort of assume the work's been done. They assume somebody out there has done that work, and you must have realized at some point, oh shit, nobody's written a good book about him, or a book about him, period. So let me bang this out, and you just do all this deep research. And I just love that it's carried you through nearly 40 years of research and writing, and that you continue to update it. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me too, but I'm not sure there'll be a fifth edition. It's I yeah, it takes a certain amount of energy and
Yeah.
to do that. I mean, I don't know what more I can possibly. Although people have said to me, what could you possibly put in the fourth edition, in the third edition, and yet I found things. I mean, there was to tell you one little story here if we have time, but
Yeah.
when Spike put out Der Fuhrer's Face, it was right before this record ban. There was a notorious character named Jimmy Petrillo, who was the head of the musicians union at the time. And he was a frustrated musician himself, been a former trumpet player. His ambition was to, or one of them anyway, was to, and I compare him to Hitler in the book. One of his ambitions was to destroy the record industry once and for all time.
Oh my God.
I mean, that is absolutely insane. Well, but in his demented little brain, he thought, the record industry is taking money out of the pockets of musicians. It's they could be playing live gigs, and because the records are out there, they're working less. So he wanted to just annihilate the record industry.
Wow.
And, he declared this ban on recording. The first, I'm not sure if it was the first one. I know he'd done. As he was the head of the Chicago union before this, but anyway, it was an industry-wide ban in '42, and it lasted about a year and a half, 2 years. Some of the record labels capitulated and signed agreements before others did, but it kept Spike Jones and the City Slickers out of the studios for about 2 years.
Wow.
And, so the only way that they survived during that time was, one of the, if they hadn't just happened to record Der Fuhrer's Face just 2 or 3 days before the ban, they never would have survived. They would have just disappeared. But anybody, what I started to say was that Der Fuhrer's Face was just a huge hit that everybody wanted a piece of it. And so there were, I think, 3 other, groups doing covers of it. And a couple of them were done just like Spike's, just before the ban, even before the record had even come out. They they picked up on this, but because it was originally written for a Donald Duck cartoon.
Right.
But one of the covers, there was a character named Eli Oberstein who had worked for RCA, and he'd been fired a couple of times, in fact. So he had his own label,
Mm-hmm.
and he came out with this version of Derek Furier's Face, and the union said, "What is this? I mean, there's a record ban on it." He claimed that he had bought the masters, that it had been recorded in Mexico, and he had bought the masters down in Mexico from some guy named Juan Valdez.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds to me like the guy who's famous for growing coffee beans.
You're right.
I'm not sure when that started. It may in fact have been that's where he took the name, but he claimed that he bought the masters down in Mexico anyway. And it turned out that the story goes is that he was recording these things surreptitiously in a garage in Manhattan,
Mm-hmm.
and then claiming that he bought them down in Mexico, and he was he was denounced. He was fined by the union. He was um, yeah, it was. I think they let him off with a warning, and then they expelled him, and then they reinstated him later on, and even RCA went and rehired him. But Arthur Fields was the name that was on the label, and apparently he'd agreed to do this on the promise that his name was not going to be on the label, and then Oversight double-crossed him and put his name on the label, so that he claimed he had absolutely nothing to do with it.
Oh my God. Wow.
It goes on and on, but yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then Petrillo wasn't done. I mean, in the like that's 48, he does the same thing again. He decrees this industry-wide ban on recording, and everybody just goes crazy trying to stockpile as much stuff as they possibly can. So Spike is recording everything he can get his hands on, including something written by a school teacher. I think actually he wrote this for elementary school kids or middle high school kids, I forget. This number that turned out to be two front teeth,
Mm-hmm.
and they just got hold of it and recorded it. Well, it was just made to order for Spike because his trumpet player George Rock, who was 6 feet tall and about 250 pounds, one of his other talents, in addition to being a brilliant trumpet player and absolutely the rock of the band, he did this little kiddie voice, and he'd actually done it with the Schnickelfritz band before he joined Spike. But he recorded this thing, and he just sounds like a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
He just so this recording of Two Front Teeth was one of the big hits of the band.
Yeah.
George Rock got all this the fan mail that he got was I don't know, thousands of people mailing him teeth in envelopes.
That's an upsetting image, is what that is, but it's appropriately funny. That's
I hope that makes your day.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's gonna it's gonna haunt my nightmares too, is what that will do.
Ruin your appetite for.
I really appreciate you, first of all, doing this show, but second of all, doing just such a diligent job of chronicling somebody's life. That is something I admire, something I maybe would like to do myself one day, but I really admire it. I think it's a lot of work, and it's to be not just commended, but it's a thing to be celebrated when somebody tries to keep somebody else's work alive. I always appreciate that.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. And if it's inspired anybody to follow in my footsteps, so to speak, and do that with somebody else, that it was suggested to me that I should do Kay Kaiser after the book came out, and I just said no. I don't want to do another musician. I just
fair enough.
feel like I'd done it.
Yeah.
The fact that I ended up doing it uh, 4 times, but I mean, I just able to get deeper and deeper into the research. But I just didn't want to do Kay Kaiser or anybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you would you like to tell people, please, where they can find you, where they can find the book?
I'm going into hiding myself, but the book is called Spike Jones Off the Record: The Man Who Murdered Music. It is available on Amazon.com in both paper and hardback. It's available on BarnesandNoble.com. It's, I should say, it's published by Bear Manor Media, which is BEAR, Manor, MANOR, Media. Also, actually, it's BearManorMedia.com is yet another place you can find this book. I have to say, the fourth edition has a yellow and red, it's a color photograph of Spike. With a a yellow and red cover, but I only mention that because there's other editions out there that have other covers. So, if you find the one where he's the color photograph of him where he's in the white and gold, he had these really extraordinary suits that he had made for himself, and he had this white and gold number done when he performed for President Truman, but he's surrounded by some of his jackets. Black and chartreuse, whatever it is, white with red, these window pane checks, black and red and blue. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Please, everybody, pick up the book. It's fantastic. Jordan, thank you again for doing the show.
Oh, thank you, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you all for listening. And as always, have a good thing. Comedy on Vinyl is a production of StolenDress Entertainment. It is produced by Mike Warden and is hosted and edited by Jason Klom. Our theme song was composed and performed by Richard Levinson. You can email us at podcast@comedyonvinyl.com. You can also send snail mail to StolenDress Entertainment, P.O. Box 805, Burbank, California, 91503. Subscribe to Comedy on Vinyl on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else you can find podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It helps. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Comedy on Vinyl, or find everything in one place at comedyonvinyl.com. A major portion of Comedy on Vinyl has been underwritten by Stand Up Records. Please visit standuprecords.com for all your comedy needs and tune in to the new Stand Up Records channel available on the Roku, where you can also find select episodes of this podcast. Visit StolenDress.com to listen to our other podcasts, watch videos, and imbibe freely of our multimedia content going back 15 plus years. StolenDress Entertainment.
Hey, it's my turn.